Well, we got, of course, Shane Beamer hitting the podium today. And I got to say, I made my way for the most part through Greg Sankey and Brian Kelly, but with all the other things going on, couldn't get to Shane Beamer. So between he and the South Carolina contingent that showed up, anything stand out to you?
No, no, which is a good thing, and I think that's actually what stood out is I'm watching what I believe. We talked about this on the radio show. I've now moved to 12 to 3 in the afternoon, which is great. I've been sleeping in the morning. I look better in the afternoon. I'm more coherent at 12 o'clock, so been a great move. But so we were able to broadcast Shane Beamer and then talk about it the rest of the afternoon. And no, there was nothing that he said, but what it was the fact that he didn't say anything. And I think we're watching, me in particular, and a lot of the South Carolina fan base is watching the maturation of a program and a head coach. And I've said this a lot today. Shane comes in, wasn't a coordinator on any side of the ball, or was not an offensive or defensive coordinator. Obviously, learned under some very respectful, very good head coaches, whether it be his father, Frank, whether it be Steve Spurrier. Sylvester Croom might not have won a lot at Mississippi State, but you won't find a more respectful man in the sport. Shane was with Philip Fulmer. He was obviously with Lincoln Riley and Kirby Smart. So it wasn't a matter of seeing how coaches do it. It was, I think, a matter of how he wants to do it. And early on, you saw some of the videos that would come out, the Full House parody and the Office parody. A couple of years ago, he went to media days. It was in Atlanta, actually, where they put out the video of him putting on the shades on and dancing to Soldier Boy and doing all that stuff. And you've seen them really cut back on that. And I think that's a good thing. And today, I thought he was very professional up there. I thought he answered almost kind of more of a political figure, answering in political correctness on a lot of things. He still had his little bit of cockiness and a swagger that you like to see him have. But year 5, and he goes into year 5 in the best shape that a South Carolina football coach has ever gone into year 5. Steve Spurrier was coming off of a rough year 4. Lou Holtz didn't have a good year 4. He lost 5 straight. Brad Scott did not have a good year, and that's going back. Will Muschamp, I don't even think got to year 5, to be honest. Now I'm trying to think about it, but 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, Will Muschamp was coming off a 4-8 season. So you see my point. So no coach really at the University of South Carolina, at least as far back as I can remember, has gone into year 5 in such a good spot with security. We've been talking about that a lot on the radio. Well, what's the pressure on Shane Beamer? There's no pressure in terms of you're getting fired. Unless it's with calls, obviously. But there's no pressure on wins and losses. There is pressure, I think, from the standpoint of at the University of South Carolina, when you have a quarterback like Lenore Sellers, when you maybe have a generational player like Dylan Stewart, that you have to strike while the iron is hot. You've got to take advantage of it. And that's where the pressure lies, is having back-to-back 9-3 seasons, maybe getting over the hump and getting to 10 victories, getting to the college football playoff. Again, he can go 5-7. Nobody's going to fire him. He's not going to be fired. But what you're going to have a situation here is now you can kind of capitalize on it and continue to have recruits look at you and say, that's a cool place to go. Look at them. They're winning. Look at that stadium environment when they're winning. Look at the coach. He seems like a great guy to go play for. You finish 6-6 or 7-5 this year, you might get passed by Florida. Who knows if DJ Lagway and Billy Napier are really on the rise? You might get passed by a Missouri who's had a couple of good years. Texas A&M today just took a recruit out of the state of out of South Carolina, a big safety, a 4-star safety that South Carolina wanted. This is a year you have to capitalize on what you've accomplished and built to this point.
You just alluded to the atmosphere at Williams-Brice Stadium, and when a program lacks success but still has a reputation for having that kind of home environment, you really know that they do have that kind of home environment. And I think we may have lost Will, unfortunately, here. Hopefully he. I thought lost you there. I thought we had a freeze, but yeah, just again, because we know where the obvious home environments are with the winning teams that win all the games, but for a stadium to get in a fan base to get the reputation when they don't win, when people know that is a tough place to play and that place is rabid, and they show up on all those off-season lists of toughest places to play, best environments, that means even more to me.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to kind of your point on that. Listen, when this program is winning. You go back to Steve Spurrier, and you go back to even the first 2 years of Lou Holtz, and that stadium is a tough place to play, extremely tough place to play. And with that being said, the enhancements that they have done, the administration has done over the last 5 years, really. Uh, it sounds stupid. They've got a little cockaboose that comes out of the end zone and cocky pops out of it, and they're blaring music and everything's going on. You go, well, that's kind of stupid. But then you get into the environment. You get into what's happening in pregame, especially if it's a night game and people are going crazy. And the way it sounds stupid, but boy, does it resonate with football recruits, and boy, does it resonate with a bunch of about 70,000 people who've been tailgating for 6 hours and have lost some of the inebriation that they need to have to function properly. It really stands out, and it gets, what is it, the old what is the old the movie, the figure skating movie with Will Ferrell and somebody else. He goes, it gets the people going, and that's what it is. And South Carolina's got a great environment. You go back to last year in the Missouri game and the Texas A&M game late in the season, and those were games late in the season that crowd was a big part of it. That crowd was a massive part of those victories. Lenora Sellers was a big part. The defense made a few stops, but but the crowd was a big part of getting the team to where they needed to be.
So Lenora Sellers he's pretty much the given that everyone knows about, and everyone's expecting this. Of course, he was tremendous last year, but even a larger step toward getting to New York City. So it's almost a given that he has to have that kind of season. I'm going to focus more on the defense because of all the talent that they lost up front. That, you opened us up, Will, by kind of putting South Carolina in this place where, are they reaching a status in the SEC where they can lose NFL draft selections and replace them and keep going? Whereas, obviously, with the way things have been in the past, you lose that kind of talent and South Carolina's not replacing it. Have they reached that point where they're just reloading?
Well, on paper, yeah, on paper it looks great. Have they loaded up on paper. And we have to joke about it because that's the transfer portal world. Last year, obviously, you had three defensive linemen. One was a former three-star recruit, and T.J. Sanders, who was the second highest rated the second highest defensive player taken behind Nick Eamon-Mori. But he was a three-star recruit. Boogie Huntley was a four-star recruit for a while there and had been pretty good. And then Tonka Hemingway was, again, a guy who was a 3 or 4-star borderline recruit. But you also had depth in DeAndre Jules, and you had a few other good players. You did lose a really good linebacker in Demetrius Knight, but Demetrius Knight came from Charlotte, had been a quarterback at Georgia Tech, and had transferred to Charlotte and been a linebacker. And when South Carolina landed Demetrius Knight, you went, okay, nice piece, good, probably a depth piece. Lo and behold, he became maybe the second best player, maybe the third best player. I don't know, but he was integral in that defense, and how they replace him is huge. And then of course you lost Nick Eamon-Mori, who could have been a first-round pick. But I say all that because, all right, Nick Eamon-Mori was a 3-star recruit. T.J. Sanders was a 3-star recruit. Demetrius Knight, so you kind of the backbone of your defense going up the middle there. These were all guys that weren't highly thought of. Well, now if you look at this year, the probably the replacement defensive lineman, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy from Texas A&M, hadn't done much at Texas A&M, but he was a former 5-star recruit. He was a former top 25 player in the nation. Did Texas A&M not get enough out of him? Was there other issues? Monkel Goodwine it is his second year in the program. He was a 4-star recruit that went to Alabama. So at least on paper, as I'm starting here, that's a pretty good start. There's 2 different linebackers that they brought in via the transfer portal. Both of those were 4 stars. I can't pronounce the first guy's last name. I'm not even going to try. We're just calling him Justin O. And then Sean Murphy, who played at Alabama, they went to Florida State and is now at South Carolina. And they've got a 4-star recruit in Fred Johnson, who will be a redshirt freshman this year they really like. So if you're going by paper, yes, the pieces are there for them to replace the guys they lost. Everybody's good. But it's now production, right? You get these 1-year assassins or 2-year assassins that come in, and they're looking to resurrect their career. Maybe something went wrong where they were at, and they're trying to get it figured out. Can you coach them up in essentially 9 months? These guys that have transferred in, can you get them to where they need to be from the time they enter school in January to the time of the first game in August?
Other teams hit the podium, along with, of course, the commissioner, Greg Sankey. Anything out of his mouth that hit home with you?
Nothing that we can always debate different things. Him talking about the scheduling and the debate whether to go to 8 or 9, or to stay at 8 or go to 9 conference games and what they want to do there. little surprised they're actually very surprised now that I think about it, so much has gone on today, that they don't actually seem to know what they're going to do. I'm sure that there was somewhere that they were kind of they're kind of leaning, but at least at this point in time, that's a great question. I don't know. That was a surprise. Normally, they're very forward thinking. It shows you how much time they're putting into what the college football playoff decision makers are going to make as the main element of that format. Or are you going to let an Indiana in with one loss? Are you going to let an SMU team in that had an awful, awful, awful strength of schedule over a South Carolina and Alabama and Mississippi teams like that? And you look at it, and all three of those teams had better victories. Throughout the year, had two or three better victories before you had to get to an SMU victory that stood out. So I think that's a big part of it. It's hard for me to believe they aren't going to go to 9 conference games, but I thought that was really intriguing as to how he kind of phrased that and where they stand, especially in regards to the fact that we're under the assumption that the 2026 schedule is just going to be reversing the 7 teams off of the schedule that you play that you hadn't played the last 2 years, or do they have a different format or setup that they want to go to?
Yeah, because obviously the SEC is going to make more money if they play an extra conference game. But obviously they're going to accrue more losses. That's going to put them in a worse light if the committee does what committees do and perceives this based on, okay, number one is your record and not looking a little deeper into, the quality of the wins and losses. But yeah, the 9-game schedule is obviously going to, 16 teams. You're going to split those 16 games as opposed to going out there and beating up on Charlotte and the Citadel and going 16-0. So there is that factor. And Greg Sankey obviously believes this league is going to flood the college football playoff system once they go to 16 teams. He's envisioning 5, 6, 7 teams in this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the boy. I get it. So, and the Big Ten envisions 5, 6 teams in it too. And clearly, Brett Yormark last week made a point. He envisions 3 or 4 Big 12. I mean, and that's the way it should. I mean, that's the way you obviously represent your conference, and you fight and scrap and claw for everything. We'll see what I think. I think the ACC is the end of the week. I believe I got my days messed up, but yeah, I think that's What does ACC say next week as where they're at in terms of this grand scheme of things?
Well, Gunter, 107.5, the game. Will, I believe for those people that are outside the South Carolina region there, they can still catch your show, correct?
Yeah, always. You can download it. We're a more accessible time too, I like to think, or at least it is for me. 12 to 3 Eastern time in the afternoon. But yeah, there's an app. You can go to your app store and download the 107.5 The Game app and take us wherever you are, wherever you might be listening, whether you're out in Oregon or down in Key West or up in New York or all the way out in Arizona, wherever you're at. You can certainly just download the app 107.5 The Game and listen to us that way.